Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another video. In today's episode, we're going to be going over a commander that I've gone out and built myself. I've had a lot of fun with it, I kind of want to share it with you all. What's fun about this one is that it's not really a real Magic card. It's actually a playtest card from Magiccon Barcelona, made by Gavin Verhey. If you took part in his mystery event, this was the prize. Today, I built a deck around Barce Friend Finder. This is a proper playtest card as well. It's literally a Magic card with the playtest sticker stuck on top of it. It's really cool. But let's talk about what Barce does first. It is 2 generic and a blue for a 2/3 legendary creature human wizard. It has, you may pay Barce and any other legendary with 1 color identity or less as your commanders as though they each had partner. And whenever another legendary creature you control dies, you may put it into your command zone. It replaces one of your commanders. So this card is actually super busted. Obviously, it's not a real Magic card. It's a playtest card, but it's still really, really strong. Think about it for a sec. At a base level, it can add blue to any monocolored commander deck. Seriously, think about that. You could just add blue to an Elish Norn Mother of Machines deck for some more blink cards. You could add blue to Shield Druid the Apocalypse for some wheel effects. I quite like the sound of adding blue to a Zada Hedron Grinder deck for some more combat tricks that draw you cards. Or at an even baser level, just adding Heuristic Study and Cyclonic Rift to any monocolored commander deck. If I'm honest, this is kind of a card I hope they don't actually print in real life. That kind of effect is just really, really strong. If they were to print it, they would need some massive downside or some really big drawback. Like the drawback would need to be bigger than like those of Companions for these to even be printable in black bordered Magic. So yeah, we could just be adding blue to a Zada deck. But where's the fun in that? I want to build around the bottom ability. I want to build around the whenever another legendary creature you control dies, you may put it into the command zone. Basically, it replaces one of your commanders. Having the ability to change your commander mid-game seems really fun and isn't something I've ever experienced before, so it's definitely something I want to build around. But what could be even more fun, and is kind of how I've taken it, is stealing your opponent's creatures and making them my commander. That seems even more fun. Rules-wise, I'm not 100% sure on this. Let me know down in the comments if you can make your opponent's commanders your commander. My initial thought was that no, it wouldn't work, because I thought your opponent gets to choose when the commander dies which zone it goes back to. But from looking at the rules, I think it has been changed to now be a state-based action. Once it's already in the graveyard, it checks and then goes back to the command zone. And as Barce is taking the creature as it is dying, I think that means that it works in the same way that commanders going to the graveyard trigger like Blood Artist effects. Again, I'm not 100% sure on this, let me know down in the comments. But either way, playing with my opponent's decks, if we can take their commanders or not, seems like a lot of fun. If anything, people are going to be getting less annoyed at me if I can't steal their commander, but either way, it's going to be cool. So with thefty stealing things in mind, that meant there were really 2 colours that we could go with. Both red and black have theft effects. Red has your straightforward threaten effects that steal things that are in play. Black has the more steal your spells kind of effects. For this deck, I chose black, but what made me choose black was finding the right card, the right partner for Barce. And the card I settled on to be Barce's partner was Golem, Patient Plotter. For me, this is the perfect card. So this is the uncommon Golem from the Lord of the Rings set. 1 black for a 3/1 legendary creature halfling horror. When Golem Patient Plotter leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you, and then you may pay a black and sacrifice a creature, return Golem from your graveyard to your hand, activate only as a sorcery. So I think this is perfect for a couple of key reasons. Firstly, it can repeatedly keep coming back again and again. Even if it's no longer your commander, you're still going to have access to it when it goes to the graveyard. That's really important because once you swap Golem with another creature, Golem won't be your commander anymore. You won't have access to it in the command zone. It won't go back there. It'll go to the graveyard. It can get tucked, all this kind of stuff. So the fact we repeatedly have access to Golem by it coming back to our hand, meaning we can play it again, or we can discard it to use a sack ability from the graveyard again, is just going to be really good. But talking of good, let's talk about its effects. Firstly, if it leaves play, the ring tempts you. Importantly, that means that you choose a creature to become your ring bearer, and it becomes legendary. So with this Golem, we can make any creature legendary, and then we can make it our commander. That seems phenomenal to me. Any creature on the board, even if it's legendary or not, could become our commander, and we can put it into the command zone if it ever dies. There must be some really broken stuff we can do with that, so let's go. The second part of the puzzle is that we need the legendary creature we control to die for it to become our commander. And Golem, fantastically, is a sacrifice outlet when it's in the graveyard. A 1 toughness creature will die really easily in commander. So all that added up together, to me, makes Golem the perfect partner for the kind of nonsense that I'm planning. So we have our commanders, we have our plan. Basically, we're going to be stealing our opponent's best things, making the coolest one our commander and hitting our opponents with them or stealing their spells, all that good stuff. Okay, so we jumped over to Tapped Out. Here is the deck list. Links to this will be down in the description below. So first up, for the plan, we need to steal our opponent's things. So we have a bunch of cards here that are really, really good at stealing our opponent's things. Basically, with these spells, I've kind of gone for two types of things. Basically, either super impactful ones like Reigns of Power that can swap whole board states around, really powerful card, we love it, or things that are repeatable. So things like Callous Oppressor and Chamber of Manipulation. There are definitely more powerful blue steal opponent creature effects out there, but I kind of went with some of the older ones because I think they're cooler and they're more interesting. Also, a lot of the older ones make you discard a card to steal an opponent's creature. That's actually a plus in this deck because you actually kind of want Golem in the graveyard most of the time because the sackability is used from the graveyard. So this is a great way of always having access to a sacrifice outlet while also stealing your opponent's things. But Golem isn't alone in terms of our sacrifice outlets. We have some dedicated cards in the deck. Cabal Therapy, being able to do it from the graveyard, is also great. We love that. Torch's Existence is kind of here because of that interaction with Golem, it putting Golem back into the graveyard, bringing a creature back. So we can use Golem's sacrifice ability from the graveyard. It's kind of a sacrifice outlet. This one's a little bit loose in terms of where it is, but it's a very strong card. We love it. We also have some card draw baked in as well with like Vampiric Rites and Village Rites. These are also great cards here. Just help keep the deck ticking over. We love all that. At a worst case, these sacrifice outlets kind of turn our theft effects into removal because we can just sack the creatures that we're stealing from our opponents. We have a very small selection of dedicated card draw. This is quite small, primarily because we're going to be getting card advantage from our opponent's decks, less from ours. That's kind of where these playing spells from our opponent's decks kind of come into play here. These are our card advantage in this deck. Specifically, I've been very impressed with Grima, Saruman's Footman in this build. Worst case, you're going to get a Rampant Ghost. Best case, you get something huge and cast it for free. We love that. And yes, wild cards like Grima and Wandering Archaic only steal instant and sorceries. The rest of them can all steal creatures as well. That's another way of getting creatures under our control from our opponent's decks. We're casting them from our opponent's decks or cheating them into play for free. We can then make them legendary, sacrifice them if we want to, and make them our commander. We can do it this way as well. It's all bonus upside. Next up, let's talk about our ramp. Let's talk about our mana. This is where things get a little bit tricky, because yes, we can steal our opponent's creatures and we can make them our commander, but we actually have to cast them after that as well. We have basic ramp in here, things like Sol Ring, Dimir Signet, we love those. But then on top of those, we have cards like Chromatic Lantern, Coalition Relic, Felwar Stone, Ornithopter of Paradise, things that can make mana of any colour. Because if we steal, say, a green-white commander, we're not going to have any plains or forests in the deck. We need to be able to generate that colour of mana. Cards like Arcane Signet and Command Tower when we get to lands are where things get even more interesting, because say for example we swap out Golem for that green-white commander, Arcane Signet won't tap for black anymore, it'll tap for blue for Barce, but then it will tap for green and white because that is now our deck's colour identity, because those are the colour identities of our commanders now. This is a very cool interaction, but it could be a little bit weird. Talking of lands, we are trying to run as many 5-colour lands as possible. So Aether Hub, fixes you once, City of Brass, Command Tower, as we mentioned, will change colour identity. That is quite cool. Exotic Orchard should hopefully tap for the colours of decks that we're playing against, so this will help fix us for the cards that we steal and make our commander. In a similar vein to Command Tower, you have things like Opal Palace, Path of Ancestry. Again, these will change as well when we make something else our commander. We also are running Thespian Stage, not to combo off with Dark Depths, just so we can make it a copy of a land that taps for the mana that we need to cast our new commanders. We want to play with our new shiny toys, this is very important. We also have things like the Vivid lands, which I don't often run because they are quite slow. But in this deck, that fixing is just really important, so we're going to run them. In terms of some other lands, I do have some colourless utility lands. We really want to have Barce available to us. Command Beacon just lets us get around the command text one time. That's just going to be really solid. Detection Tower, making our opponent's creatures lose Hexproof and Shroud, means that we can steal them easier. We like that. High Market is just a bonus sacrifice outlet. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure what Homeward Path does in this deck. It's a land that lets you tap it and says each player gains control of all creatures that they own. So this is kind of opposite to what the whole deck is doing. It's kind of here as a backup in case things go really wrong and there's a rules interaction that kills us. We can give the cursed creatures back to our opponents and everything will be fine. For interaction, we have some cool cards. We have a Snuff Out, we love that. We have a couple of cheap black and blue instant speed interaction. This is all very good. We have a board wipe with a Damnation and also one ring to rule them all. Again, just having some additional temptation, making creatures legendary, giving us the chance to make him our commander is cool. We love that. And then Calidus Assassin just coming in as a copy of the best creature on the board, I have found to be very, very good. I really like this card. Protection-wise, we've only got a couple of bits. We have an Offer You Can't Refuse, Swan Song. They're cheap, they counter the things that we actually care about countering, so they're just really good. And then Split Decision, this one isn't the best, but we're playing with people decks, it kind of felt right to have a Vote Matters card in here. I like it, I think it's cool. In terms of our win cons, we have some cool options down here. We have things like Echo Storm and Skull Storm. These have very powerful effects that are equal to the number of times that we've cast our commanders from the command zone. Importantly, these will tick up if we cast multiple commanders from the command zone during a game. The first time we cast commanders from a command zone, they won't have command attacks, even if we've already done the whole steal them, make them legendary, that kind of thing. They won't have command attacks, they'll be really good with things like Skullstorm and Echo Storm. We have a card like Geode Golem, which helps us cheat an expensive commander that we've stolen from our hand back into play. Great for stealing an opponent's Dragon, something like that. And then we have cards like Brainstealer Dragon and Thieving Amalgam. These basically drain out our opponents when we do things with cards that they own. So with Thieving Amalgam, whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And then Brainstealer Dragon, whenever a non-land permanent an opponent owns enters the battlefield under your control, they lose life equal to its mana value. Again, we're turning the stuff that we've stolen from our opponents against them, beating them with it with these cards. They're really fun. Right, so that is the deck. How strong has it been? So the cool thing with this deck is that because we're basically beating our opponents with their decks, it kind of scales to the level of the table very well. I played this in a game against 3 precons and lost, but I've also played it in a game against 3 highly tuned decks and won because they had more impactful spells for me to steal. Also, in the higher power level games, the thing I found is that this deck really has the ability to just completely muck up their plans. Like, I was playing one game where I knew a player had combos in his deck. Just chipping away at them with a Night Veil Spectre, exiling cards on the top of their library, you might take a combo piece with that. That could completely wreck someone's game plan. These things are really cool. In terms of upgrades to this, there are definitely better theft spells out there. I like these ones because they're kind of old and a bit dorky, and I played with them when I was a kid. I think they're fun. You could definitely find some more tuned options here. If money was no issue at all, then we'd have some free counter magic in here just to help protect our board state that little bit more. The other upgrades as well, specifically in those lower powered level games where you're not stealing like big haymakers from your opponents all the time, I think this deck might need 1 or 2 of its own. I was thinking of adding like a little reanimate package because again, we do have some discard spells with things like Overtaker and like Tortured Existence. You have cards like Reanimate and Animate Dead that steal stuff from our opponent's graveyards, keeping it in theme with what the deck is trying to do. But we could also just stick a big dumb fatty in the deck ourselves, which we can use as a win con if we need it. Something like Archon of Cruelty is just dumb and stupid, and that would be pretty solid. But I want something a bit more fun, something like a Skittles or a Trench Gorger. Those seem kind of more the vibe of what I'm trying to go with here. So those are the upgrades I'll probably make to this deck over time. But how has it played in the games so far? So, I'll be honest, this has not won a great deal of games, but it's some of the Magic I've enjoyed the most playing. The games with this deck are super fun and interesting because basically you're playing with 4 decks. You're playing with your deck, and you're playing with your opponents as well, stealing their best things, making them their own, trying to find a cool way that they can all interact together. You just have so many options, and the main thing I found myself thinking about when I start games is, who am I going to be stealing things off of first? Generally, I found myself going for the players with either like the coolest or most impactful cards that are just strong by themselves, lesser so than like the synergy decks. Like for example, there's less things I want from like a typal creature type matters style of deck. I don't want like an Elf Lord in this deck at all. I want some big dumb haymaker that'll win me the game. In terms of coolest things I've made my commander, I made an opponent's Mishra claimed by Gix my commander. This card is just really, really strong. I was very glad to have it on my side of the board. That was really cool. I was kind of hoping he would play the Phyrexian Dragon Engine so I could steal that as well and meld the two, but I think he might have seen the line of not playing the Dragon Engine so I could do that. In the most recent game with this deck, I made a Tree of Perdition my commander. That was quite fun. With the sacrifice stuff in this deck and the ability to recast this, I could have repeatedly made everyone's life total 13. Well, that was really strong, and shockingly, that was a very quick game of Commander. In terms of cards that have been good, again, like I've not played with Green Saruman Swimmer before, I really liked it, I thought it was really strong. Some of the things that have been really busted in this deck are just instant speed ways of stealing your opponent's creatures. So things like Calla Suppressor, things like Overtaker, things like Reigns of Power specifically. This card is super messed up. I need to run it in more decks. Specifically with the instant speed ones, it means that you can muck up combat like you would not believe. At a minimum, they kind of become fogs, because if a creature changes ownership in the middle of combat, it falls out of combat. So like at a base level, Reigns of Power is a 4-mana fog. But with this card, what you can do if you're behind in a game of Magic is just swap boards with one opponent, use their board to attack a different opponent, all their creatures are tapped, you then get your board back, which will be untapped because that's what Reigns of Power does to begin with. I love this card, it's really strong, I need to run it more. But yeah, that's the deck, that's kind of how it's played out. I really enjoyed this deck, it's been awesome. It's one of the decks I'm going to be keeping around for quite a while, because it just repeatedly does cool and interesting things that you don't expect in a game of Commander. Right, so that's where we're going to end the video today. Let me know down in the comments if you like this build. What is your dream pairing with Barce? How would you build this? Would you just add blue to a monocolored deck? Or is there another cool way of abusing its ability that I've not seen that you could think of? Let me know, it'd be really cool to hear from you all. But until next time, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.